The midday sun in southern New Mexico scorched Highway 47, stretching endlessly over barren, dusty land. The wind had stilled, leaving only shimmering waves of heat rising from the cracked asphalt like a mirage. No cars, no people, just silence, and the suffocating heat of the desert summer. Deputy Tom Walker was driving back after his morning patrol when he suddenly hit the brakes. Tires screeched, leaving black streaks on the dry road. About 100 yards ahead, something moved in the lane. Not a person, not a stalled vehicle. It was a dog. And draped over its back, limp as a willow branch, was the tiny body of a little girl. The dog was a German shepherd, a breed renowned for its service in the military and law enforcement. However, this animal bore no resemblance to the proud image people associate with its kind. Its once thick coat was matted with blood and red dust, hanging in heavy clumps. Its legs trembled, each step a slow drag as if carrying the weight of a collapsing world. Yet its eyes, cloudy amber, remained fixed straight ahead. There was something in that gaze that rooted Tom in a place like an invisible tether pulling him still. The girl lay motionless across the dog's back, her head slumped against its shoulder, tangled blonde hair covering half her dirt-smeared face. One arm dangled loose, her dress torn and filthy. She was so small she could be mistaken for an old doll, if not for the dark smear of blood beneath her shoulder blade and the faint rise and fall of breath in her chest. Tom stepped out of his vehicle, unarmed, arms open, crouching as low as possible. He had served in the military. He recognized the stance. This dog was trained. It didn't flee, didn't approach. It stood its ground, front legs shaking but resolute, like it was holding a silent vow. Its look was not one of panic, but of absolute protection. Not for itself, but for the child. "Easy now, buddy," Tom said softly, his voice the same gentle tone he once used with wounded comrades. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." The dog let out a low growl, not threatening but warning, then slowly lowered itself to the ground. Each breath was a visible strain, like a machine breaking down. With eerie precision, it allowed the girl to slide from its back, setting her gently on the dry ground beneath its shadow. It wasn't instinct guiding that action. It was care born of memory, of repeated commands from training, of the trust once placed in it by someone who loved it enough to entrust it with a child's life. Tom knelt, extending a hand from a distance, never breaking eye contact with the dog. "That's good. You did well. Let me take it from here." No one spoke at that moment, but as Tom gently lifted the girl and a small silver tag tangled in the dog's blood-matted fur tapped against his leg, he understood. This dog wasn't lost. It was on a mission, and he, no one else, had been chosen to receive it. As he placed the girl in the back seat of the patrol SUV and turned back, Tom saw the dog still standing there, its gaze locked on the child. Under the blistering sun, that image burned itself into his memory. A bloodied dog, a silent child, and an abandoned road. This wasn't chance. And Ranger, though no one said his name aloud, had completed half his duty. The rest was for someone who understood enough to carry it on. The patrol SUV sat still by the edge of the deserted highway, as if it too was trying to comprehend what had just occurred. Inside, the desert heat pressed in from all sides, making the silence in the cramped interior even more suffocating. A silence so absolute it seemed to stop time. Tom Walker sat behind the wheel, staring ahead, but his thoughts circled the back seat, where a small girl lay curled under a thin emergency blanket. No cries, no sudden movements, only the faint rise and fall of her chest beneath the silver fabric, the breath of a soul too small to grasp what was happening, or too broken to try. She looked about 5, her frame disturbingly frail. Her wrists were caked with dirt, her skin marred by scattered red burns, round and dark, like marks left by something hot pressed against delicate flesh. One bare foot showed torn, bleeding nails and cracked heels as she'd walked miles over unforgiving ground. Her face was a mix of dried blood and red dust, But it was her eyes that gripped Tom. Wide open, hollow, not a flicker of fear or suspicion. Just the emptiness of someone drained of emotion. It wasn't the look of a child who'd just survived the horror. It was the look of someone long acquainted with pain. So used to it, they no longer reacted. Besides Tom, the German Shepherd lay sprawled on the floor of the SUV, his chest heaving with labored breaths. His fur was torn at the shoulder, dried blood crusting over, and one leg injured. Yet he remained alert, not sleeping, never looking away from the girl. Even when Tom reached for a water bottle to offer the child, Ranger raised his head and let out a deep, low growl. Not aggressive, but a reminder. Do not touch unless she lets you. Tom pulled his hand back slowly. He wasn't angry, wasn't surprised, just felt a quiet ache bloom in his chest. People often speak of loyal dogs, of their protective instincts, but this was something else. Ranger wasn't just guarding. He had taken on a duty no one gave him, no one could command. A burden he chose, willingly, so fully it made one feel ashamed. The silver tag on his collar swung with each bump of the car. Ranger. Canine Active Duty, U.S. Army. Code M082. Return to SGT-J Miller. Sergeant Jessica Miller. Tom had heard the name. Renowned canine handler, missing for months during a classified mission. If Ranger was her partner, if he showed up here, in this condition, then whatever was happening now was far beyond anything Tom had ever faced. The girl still didn't move. But then, suddenly, her tiny fingers curled, clutching a fold of the blanket like it was the last thing in the world that belonged to her. Ranger noticed instantly, lifting his head, emitting a soft, low sound. Not a bark or whine, but a breath full of meaning. He shifted, positioning his injured side between her and the rest of the seat. Tom didn't move. In his eyes, the bond between these two didn't need words, didn't need explanation. It was simply unbreakable. After a while, he tried again. What's your name? No reply, but this time the girl's eyes blinked, just once, faint and slow. And that blink, no more, no less, was the first confirmation. She heard him. No panic, no retreat. Just heard. Tom nodded, though she couldn't see him. That's okay, he whispered. You don't have to say anything. No one's going to make you do anything. Just breathe and stay right here. Ranger, won't leave you, and neither will I. As if to seal the promise, Ranger bent his head and gently licked the back of the girl's hand just once. She flinched, but didn't pull away. Then, as if instinct overpowered fear, she placed her small hand on his head, fingers trembling, lost in the blood-stained fur. Tom saw it, and he nearly cried, not out of pity, but because he knew he had just witnessed something sacred, a child finding her first anchor in a shattered world. Quietly, he started the engine. Ranger resumed his post, eyes fixed ahead. But this time, Tom sensed a shift, like that simple touch had brought reassurance. She's still here, and I've taken the first step. In the stifling silence of what was supposed to be an ordinary patrol, 3 souls sat, each carrying something different. A man burdened by helplessness, a child bearing nameless wounds and wordless memories, and a dog guarding them both with everything he had left. As the afternoon sun slanted through the windshield, painting faint streaks of gold across the dashboard, Tom pulled up beside an old, dilapidated warehouse, once used as a ranger outpost. He needed to assess the girl's condition more carefully, tend to Ranger's injuries, and place an emergency call to the rapid response team. But more than anything, he needed a quiet moment to face the question growing louder in his mind. Who is this dog? After making sure the girl was still stable and letting her rest in the back seat, Tom popped the trunk and rummaged through the backup emergency kit. His hand paused when it brushed against a thick, faded fabric tucked in the corner of the cargo space, a torn tactical vest darkened by blood and desert grime, with a name patch still clinging stubbornly to it. Ranger, stitched in black thread on a silver-gray backing. Just below it, a small shield emblem with 2 clear letters. K9 Unit. Tom lifted the vest with both hands and flipped it inside out. Claw marks, rips and tears all down the body. Whatever this gear had been through, it hadn't been a routine chase. It was a war zone. And Ranger, judging by every detail, had once been part of an elite combat unit, trained and deployed like a true soldier. He laid the vest on the hood, then turned back toward Ranger, still lying under the front seat, but now upright, ears pricked, eyes sharp the moment he noticed Tom holding something of his. Tom decided to test it. His voice lowered, firm, precise. Not loud, but with the kind of command only someone who had served could replicate. Sit. Without hesitation, Ranger sat. Back straight, front legs squared, gaze locked on Tom. Not a single beat was missed. Stay. Stillness. Down. Ranger lay flat against the dusty concrete floor, head gently resting between his paws, eyes never leaving Tom's face. Look. His gaze shifted instantly, steady as if awaiting his next directive. Tom stepped closer, a quiet swell of awe and sorrow building in his chest. This wasn't just obedience. It was the way Ranger moved, with precision and readiness, not just following orders, but embodying the discipline and resolve of a professional soldier. No fear, no doubt. Every movement carried the weight of memory, of commands once drilled, of duty burned into muscle and instinct. Tom knelt, eye level with him. Ranger's eyes no longer looked clouded with exhaustion. Now, under the pale sunlight filtering through the broken roof, they were startlingly clear, as if something within had found structure again. Order. Purpose. "You're the real deal," Tom whispered. "And you lost your partner, didn't you?" Of course, Ranger didn't reply. But the way his ears folded back and a long, deep breath left his chest, as if emptying the last fragments of broken trust, Tom could almost see the dog's memory. A dry hillside, the crack of gunfire, a distant voice calling out, a woman in a faded jacket, and after that, silence. Tom gently ran his hand over Ranger's neck, fingers tracing the silver chain of the name tag. Dried blood. Bite marks tangled in his fur. It looked like Ranger had chewed himself free from a tether. No GPS collar, no tracker. He had crossed dozens, maybe hundreds of miles to bring the girl to safety. Deliberately. Precisely. "You didn't just save her," Tom murmured. "You're carrying out your handler's last mission." He stood and turned toward the SUV, just in time to see the girl had sat up. She wasn't leaning on the seat, but against the window, eyes wide, staring at Ranger through the glass. No expression, no blink, but no longer empty. It was the look of someone searching for something still worth trusting. Ranger shifted slightly toward her. No bark, no movement, just a slow bow of the head. Tom felt something tighten in his chest. Between these two souls was a kind of memory no one else could share. Not because it was impossible to understand, but because what they'd lived through had moved beyond language. There was one thing Tom knew for certain. Ranger was no ordinary dog. And if he had made it here, carrying a silent child and a torn combat vest, then the final member of a war no one ever declared had just been placed into Tom's hands. As dusk began to stretch along the horizon, painting the desert edges in cold violet streaks, Tom pulled his phone from his chest pocket. He hesitated for a second, then dialed. The line rang twice. "Walker?" A warm, dry voice answered with a hint of sarcasm. "You're not calling for beers at this hour, are you?" Tom exhaled, half smile, half grim. "I need you, Kate. Not for me, for a child and a dog." Dr. Kate Sullivan, the best veterinarian in the region, and the only person Tom trusted enough to call when nothing made sense, asked nothing more. She simply said, 15 minutes. Send me the coordinates." 12 minutes later, her dusty blue-gray pickup rolled up beside the warehouse, headlights washing the wall in a muted yellow haze like a thin ribbon of hope. Kate stepped out, hair tied in a neat bun under her cap. old but clean khaki gear clinging to her lean frame, eyes sharp and focused just like the last time Tom saw her, 8 years ago, at an animal rescue camp outside the city. She didn't ask many questions, just walked over to the SUV, crouched beside Ranger, and nodded. He's not a house dog. He's military. Tom handed her the shredded tactical vest. Kate knelt and ran her fingers gently over the name patch and K9 badge. "Ranger," she murmured. "I read about a dog tagged M082. Worked along the border. Went missing with his handler 3 months ago. If this guy made it here alive, he's not just a soldier. He's a miracle." Tom said nothing, just gesturing toward the back seat, where the girl still lay curled, eyes open, staring at the ceiling as if unsure whether to believe the world around her. Kate approached slowly. She didn't kneel right away, just sat at the edge of the doorframe, keeping her distance. "Hi there," she said gently, just above a whisper. "My name's Kate. I won't touch you if you don't want me to, but I'd like to check you over, okay?" No clear response, but after a few seconds, the girl tilted her head, barely, like a silent nod. Kate put on gloves, used a pen light to check her pupils, and then placed a stethoscope over her chest. She didn't say a word while she worked, her attention fixed as if listening to each heartbeat like it was speaking to her. After a while, she peeled off the gloves and turned to Tom. "Severe dehydration, long-term malnutrition, no broken bones I can find, likely in deep psychological shock. I'll start a mild IV, but she needs to get to a hospital, fast." Tom nodded. "Anything else?" Kate hesitated, then gently brushed the girl's hair back behind her ear. Just below the hairline, near the right earlobe, a small tattoo emerged. A single eye inside an inverted triangle, its edges faint like it had been scratched in by crude ink. The moment he saw it, Tom felt a chill crawl down his spine. Kate was silent for a beat, then whispered, mostly to herself, "I've seen this mark before. 2 years ago, emergency case outside Flagstaff. A young woman stumbled into my clinic after giving birth alone in the woods. Same tattoo on her neck. When she woke, she said 3 words before vanishing. Light of grace." Tom's brow furrowed. "A cult?" Kate nodded slowly. "Not official, but I've read reports. An extremist spiritual group living off-grid in the southern desert. They believe children born through pain are cleansed for salvation. They have their camp, isolated. No one enters, no one leaves, unless they're broken." The air in the warehouse dropped several degrees. Ranger, as if sensing the shift, let out a soft growl and moved toward the rear door, eyes locked on the tattoo as if he too remembered something unspeakable. Tom's hand clenched into a fist. If that girl came from there, then Ranger did something no one else dared. He went in and brought her out alive. Kate said nothing. She knelt beside him, reaching out to place her hand gently on Ranger's back. "You're a true warrior, aren't you?" Ranger didn't flinch, didn't growl. He just bowed his head, eyes quiet as a desert night. But in those eyes, something cracked open, a memory, a loss, and a promise still burning, never forgotten. The desert wind began to howl outside, feral, rising like a warning from some unnamed place. Fine sand clung to the frame of Tom's old SUV, seeping into every crevice of the side mirrors, dusting the windows. In the stillness of that space, every sound became sharper, every breath, every faint shift. But in that silence, something unexpected happened. Tom had just opened the trunk to grab a blanket when his eyes caught a glimpse of a faded, crumpled, soft cap tossed beside the toolbox. It was his old patrol cap, worn, sweat-stained, and dusty from years of use. He reached for it out of habit, but never made it. Ranger, who had been lying near the car door, jolted upright as if something deep inside him had been struck. He let out a sound. Not a growl of threat, but a broken, dry sound, almost swallowed in his throat. It wasn't a noise from this moment, but from somewhere far away, where memories still reeked of blood, gunpowder, and tears. Then suddenly, Ranger lifted his head and let out a short, low howl. the kind of howl you'd expect from a lone wolf in the wilderness. It wasn't loud, it wasn't shrill, but it echoed through the space like a summons for something long buried. Tom froze. He had never seen a dog react like that to a hat. "You okay, old friend?" he asked softly. The ranger didn't respond. The dog stepped forward slowly, head bowed, and inhaled deeply near the cap, as if trying to recover a scent he thought he'd lost forever. Fabric, sweat, dust, but beneath it, something else. Ranger's body trembled, not in fear, but from memories clawing their way back. And then, the past returned. A dusty training ground, blistering sunlight, a tall woman with brown hair tied back in a tight knot, kneeling beside a young German shepherd. "Ranger, your name is Ranger because you never leave your post. You're a sentinel, not because anyone commands it, but because you choose to be loyal." Jessica Miller, K-9 handler for the military, wasn't someone known for the sentiment. But with Ranger, her voice always softened, as if she were speaking to a brother in arms. Day after day, Ranger learned it all, from basic commands to recognizing real firearms from dummies, from bracing against the shock of gunfire to executing the perfect bite hold on a target. But beyond the drills, Jessica taught him something no manual ever could. One afternoon, she brought a little girl around 4 years old. Golden hair, a faded blue dress, a one-eared teddy bear in hand. "Lily, this is Ranger. Ranger, this is the reason you never give up." The girl smiled, timid, and stepped forward with an outstretched hand. Ranger, accustomed only to leather, metal, and gunpowder, leaned in to sniff her hand, then dropped to the ground and rested his chin on her knee. Jessica continued, "You're not just a soldier, you're a fortress. Lily is my daughter. If I don't come back, you will be her home." Back to the present. Ranger was panting hard now. He didn't howl again, didn't growl. He simply sat there, eyes locked on the cap in Tom's hands, eyes full of unspoken things, a vow unfulfilled, grief is unnamed. Tom understood. There were no records yet, no proof, but every fiber in his body, father, soldier, protector, told him the truth. The girl in the back seat was Lily, and Ranger, with no one left to give orders, had crossed the desert and pain to bring her to a place where she might still live. And then, from the back seat, the little girl, still silent until now, lifted her head and looked at Ranger. Her gaze was no longer dull. She watched him bow before the cap, then slowly leaned forward and reached out a hand to touch his neck. Ranger turned. Just a single blink, brief and soft. But Tom saw it. Ranger recognized her. No words were needed. No names had to be said aloud. That gaze, stretching from dusty training fields to a cold night on an abandoned highway, was enough to confirm that this was why Ranger was still alive. Tom's throat tightened. He wanted to ask, to confirm, to understand. But some truths are too sacred for words. And one truth stood tall above all else. Ranger had kept his promise, even after his handler was gone. Even when no unit remained to call his name, he kept his word, because he was a soldier. Lily still hadn't spoken, but her eyes glistened for the first time, not from fear, but because, deep in the quiet chambers of her heart, something had melted, something had survived. The next morning, the sun rose slow and pale, casting a hesitant gold across the warehouse. Tom leaned against the doorframe, eyes scanning the highway, where the wind kept sweeping up clouds of dust. In his chest was a feeling he hadn't known in 15 years as a cop. The fragile ache of hope, and a gnawing fear he couldn't name. Inside the SUV, Lily still sat as before, head resting on the seat, eyes wide and fixed on Ranger lying at her feet, head placed beneath the bench. She hadn't said another word, but something had shifted. The emptiness in her gaze had cracked, just barely, like the first fracture in a wall of ice. Ranger hadn't left her side. Not once. Even when Tom opened the door, Ranger only lifted his head, alert, then lowered it again, saying, "She's still here. I'm still guarding." But that fragile quiet didn't last. The growl of engines broke the morning stillness. 3 vehicles, 2 dark SUVs and an armored pickup, rumbled down the gravel, tires crunching with a sound that promised nothing good. Tom's fists clenched. He hadn't been notified of any backup. No one was supposed to be coming. The lead SUV stopped. A door opened. Out stepped a tall, lean man in a long, sand-colored coat dusted with road grit. His eyes were deep-set, skin sun-darkened, but it was his smile that struck Tom the most. Polite, calm, and empty, like a mask fitted too well. "Good morning, officer," the man said with practiced warmth. "I'm Reverend Nathaniel Carter. I believe you have a young girl. My daughter, Lily Carter." Tom didn't answer immediately. He took a step forward, planting himself firmly in front of the SUV. "I'll need to verify that. The girl hasn't spoken, she has no ID, and—" Reverend Carter raised a hand, still smiling. "Oh, no need for documents. We don't live by secular law, we live by faith. Lily is my blood. She has been chosen as the gate opener, a child consecrated during the covenant rite. We have the right to take her back." From the other 2 vehicles, 2 more men stepped out. Bodyguard types in leather jackets, cold-eyed, silent, flanking the Reverend. But before Tom could react, a furious growl erupted from inside the car. "Ranger!" The dog lunged up, slamming his front paws against the rear door, pushing through the gap. His back fur bristled, teeth bared, growl sharp and rhythmic like fire building to a roar. Not fear. Fury. Lily startled. But instead of shrinking away, she lowered her head and grabbed the fur at Ranger's neck, gripping him like an anchor, she remembered. Reverend Carter took a step closer. "Lily," he said sweetly, falsely gentle. "My little girl, don't let strangers lead you astray from your chosen path." In that instant, Ranger's snarl exploded into a deep, savage bellow that echoed across the lot. The 2 bodyguards instinctively stepped back. This wasn't a warning bark. This was a declaration. "This is not your child. Do not come closer." Tom moved forward, fully blocking the vehicle. "You say you're her father. No dog reacts like that to its real owner." Reverend Carter's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. Wild animals act on instinct. They can't comprehend the soul of a chosen child. Lily is our preparation. Our final offering." "Offering?" Tom echoed, voice tightening. "Not in the way you think," Carter replied calmly. "We return her soul to the light, to save the community from darkness. Only children like Lily, born in silence, forged in solitude, can be gate openers." Tom's hand moved to the grip of his sidearm. "You just confessed to a ritual that may involve systemic child abuse. I'm advising you to leave now." Reverend Carter didn't argue. He merely smiled and turned back. "We will return. And when we do, nothing will stop what has already begun." He stepped into his SUV. The doors slammed shut. The convoy backed away slowly, not rushing, as if they believed their return was inevitable. As the dust settled, Tom turned to see Ranger still standing, head lowered, body tense like a bowstring, eyes locked on the door as if awaiting a signal to strike. And then Lily, for the first time, spoke. A single word. Soft as wind. "No." Tom spun around. "What did she just say?" Kate nodded, her voice full of quiet awe. She said no. Not to him. She's not Lily Carter. And in the pale gold of morning, 3 souls, a lone man, a forgotten child, and a dog carrying the memory of a lost promise, had become a front line. That midday, the desert sunlight no longer burned with fury. It draped gently across the warehouse walls like fine threads spun down from the sky. In that space, everything seemed to slow, weighed down by a silence too heavy to lift. Tom sat by the window frame, eyes staring into the distance, but his mind replayed the morning's images. Reverend Carter's claim of paternity, the man's glacial eyes, and his twisted declaration of sacrifice. Inside, Lily sat curled in a corner of the floor, resting her back against an old foam cushion. She hadn't spoken since that single word. No. But her hands never stopped moving. The moment Kate set down a box of colored pencils and a few sheets of blank paper, Lily began to draw, not at anyone's urging, as though a door inside her had creaked open after being shut tight for too long. Ranger lay next to her, body curled protectively, his eyes tracking every stroke of her pencil. Occasionally, he would lift his head and lean in close to the page, reading, perhaps, or sniffing out something deeper than colors and shapes. The first sheet was turned. 2 little girls appeared, uncannily alike. Blonde hair, wide eyes, round faces, dresses with star patterns. But one had a snowflake pendant around her neck. The other did not. Kate studied the page in silence, then asked softly, "Are they sisters?" Lily neither nodded nor shook her head. She simply moved to the second page. This time the image froze the room cold. A woman, long-haired, hands bound, terror in her eyes. Behind her, jagged brick lines and a small iron door, drawn with such sharp detail it could only come from deep memory, not imagination. On the wall behind her, the unmistakable symbol, a triangle with an eye at its center, the same emblem of the cult Carter had spoken of. Tom leaned in, jaw tight. "You saw this?" No reply. Lily had already turned to the third sheet, a chapel, tall, steep-roofed, radiant lines of light drawn from the top of its dome. On the steps stood a towering man in a long black robe, arm raised in blessing. Before him, 2 girls, identical to those in the first drawing. One of them was blindfolded with a black cloth. A low growl rumbled in Ranger's throat. He rose and stepped closer to the table, his eyes locked on the man in the drawing, as if he wanted to lunge through the paper and protect someone. Not instinct. Memory. The reflex of a dog who had seen this. Tom noticed the shift in Ranger. He knelt beside him, gaze locked on the figure. "It's him. Carter. Ranger remembers him." Kate moved closer, her hand gently resting on Lily's shoulder. "Were you taken? With your sister?" This time, Lily nodded silently, and then she turned to the fourth page. There was no image, just one word, written in delicate pencil strokes. Emma. No colors, no shapes, just a name, written beneath the drawing of the twin girls, right beside the snowflake pendant. Kate covered her mouth. "Emma, she's the other one?" Lily nodded again. Then came something no one expected. She placed her hand over her own heart, and then pointed to the picture, then placed her hand over Ranger's chest, and pointed again, this time to the drawing of the imprisoned woman. Tom and Kate were speechless. "You're saying Emma is still alive? She's being held somewhere?" Tom asked, his voice barely hiding the shock. Ranger stepped forward and pressed his head gently to the image of the woman, an act not of curiosity but of recognition, like someone who had lived that moment and felt it through the breath of someone who once meant everything. Seconds later, Lily folded the papers gently and clutched them to her chest, like sacred treasure, and curled up beside Ranger. The dog rested his face on her lap, eyes closed, ears high and alert, listening for things the world no longer dared speak aloud. Tom rose. "Kate, if this is real, if Emma's still alive, we can't wait." Kate nodded. "I know, but we need more. A location, something concrete, a statement, a clearer piece of evidence, something law enforcement can act on." Tom looked at Ranger. "I believe he knows. Ranger can lead us there. He remembers." Lily lifted her head, and in a voice barely more than a whisper, she spoke a second time. "Emma is still waiting." Returning from the tense, dangerous confrontation with Reverend Carter, Tom couldn't shake the image of Lily whispering Emma's name. Not with fear, but with the weight of someone carrying a truth no one else dared see. That night, in the small back room of the warehouse, while Lily slept curled beside Ranger, still clutching her drawings, Tom opened his laptop and began combing through old files, the ones most officers had long forgotten. One name kept resurfacing in scattered notes, like a shadow: Rosa Martinez. Police records described her as a Mexican woman, once residing in the southern outskirts of Eldora. She claimed to have been part of the Light of Grace cult, and said she fled after witnessing unusual child rituals. Her testimony was dismissed. She'd been labeled unstable, unreliable, officially mentally unfit to testify. Tom didn't believe that. He knew how easily the world dismissed those who spoke truths it didn't want to face. When someone stares into the dark corners of humanity, society calls them crazy, because it's easier than admitting they're right. The next morning, Tom drove alone toward the edge of the desert where Rosa had once been reported wandering, near a derelict gas station that hadn't operated since 2006. Ranger insisted on coming. The moment Tom opened the passenger door, the dog jumped in, eyes locked on the road as he knew. This wasn't just another patrol. The closer they got to Eldora, the heavier the air became. Not from heat, but from memory. Ranger began to shift. His ears pricked, sometimes growling under his breath, then licking his lips as if trying to suppress something rising inside. He sniffed every gust of wind blowing through the open window, and each time his eyes darkened, deeper, farther, touched by pain. Tom understood. Ranger had been here before. Maybe not this exact place, but this land, this dust, and maybe that terrible night where he couldn't save Emma. They didn't have to search long. Rosa appeared behind a patch of dry cactus, sitting curled under a broken awning. Wrapped in a tattered blanket, she was drawing circles in the sand with a stick, muttering in jumbled old Spanish. Tom approached carefully. "Mrs. Martinez?" No reply. But then Ranger stepped forward. No bark, no growl. He simply bowed his head low and moved gently toward her, lying down at her feet. Rosa's hands stopped trembling. Her eyes, cloudy from age and years on the run, suddenly lit up as if reclaiming a forgotten piece of herself. "This dog, he was there." Tom nodded. "His name is Ranger. He belonged to a military K-9 handler. He disappeared, and now he's guarding a girl, Lily. She may be one of the twin girls you mentioned in your old statements." Rosa turned slowly. Lily? I heard that name in the night. Inside the thick walls, beneath the chapel. Her mother whispered it so softly, like a prayer. I remember now. I remember it clearly. Her hands trembled again as she pulled out a small, weathered notebook from her clothes. The corners were curled, the cover tied with a frayed red string. But when she handed it to Tom, he could feel it. This wasn't just testimony. This was true. He opened it. The first pages were full of strange symbols. The eye in the triangle, spirals connected by jagged lines, scrawled verses like half prayers. But halfway through, the names. In dark ink, written with a shaking hand, but clearly, Lily Miller. Twin. And underneath, marked, one kept, one chosen, both are mirrors. Tom looked up. "What was your role there, Rosa?" She didn't blink. "I cared for the children. I wasn't a ritual keeper. I thought my hands were clean. But when I saw the girls, so alike, it chilled me. I couldn't ignore it. One day I opened the basement door. I saw their mother, sitting, singing, her hair tangled, wrists scarred from bindings. She sang the names, Lily and Emma. I knew then. I had to save at least one." Tom's grip on the notebook tightened. "You carried Lily out?" "I don't know. The necklace fell. I couldn't tell which one I had. I just ran. And I've never forgiven myself since." Ranger edged closer to Rosa. He didn't bark, just breathed slowly, pressing his head to her leg. That warmth drew tears from Rosa's eyes. "This dog he remembers. He saw, he lost someone. And he's never stopped looking." Tom bowed his head. "Emma may still be alive. We'll find her." Rosa raised a trembling finger to her lips, whispering, "Don't go alone. They have places no one dares touch. Beneath the chapel there are tunnels. Only they know the doors. And time is running out." That afternoon, the air carried a strange weight. No one spoke of it, but everyone felt it. The late-day sun slipped through the trees like it was trying to hold on to a piece that had just begun to fracture. Tom drove slowly back to Kate's house, his mind still caught in the echo of Rosa Martinez's broken whispers and the trembling handwriting in the worn notebook. Beside him, Ranger sat silently, his head resting on the hand-drawn map Lily had sketched. His eyes never left the smudged pencil lines, like he too was tracing a road long buried and painful. The Jeep turned onto the gravel path leading into Kate's backyard, its tires crackling over the thin layer of sand. Tom had just turned off the engine when he heard it. Another vehicle, heavier, faster. Moments later, blue and red lights spun through the windows, slashing across the house like cold knives. Ranger jumped to his feet, a low growl escaping as he turned toward the gate, already sensing the unfamiliar scent from the moment tires hit the dirt. Tom's hand found the door handle, but he didn't rush. He moved slowly, not out of calm, but because every cell in his body reacted like someone who knew betrayal often came from those closest. The front gate swung open, 3 police cruisers. The man who stepped out first, Rick Dalton, sheriff of the town. A face once called a colleague, once called friend, now cold as a sentence yet to be read. "Tom Walker," Rick called, voice ringing sharp in the thick air. "You are under arrest for kidnapping a minor, possession of falsified evidence, obstruction of justice, and endangerment of a child witness." Tom didn't move. Ranger stepped in front of him, between Tom and the officers, not barking, not baring teeth, just standing. In the slanted light, his shadow stretched long across the gravel like an ancient warrior just awakened. "What the hell are you talking about, Rick?" Tom's voice was hoarse with disbelief. "Lily Carter, Reverend Carter's daughter, was reported missing. A witness placed you as the last adult to see her. You've repeatedly approached a known, unreliable source and are using unverified information for personal ends. I can't ignore this." Tom's fists clenched. "Lily wasn't kidnapped. She escaped. With this dog. From a sick cult you're protecting. I have proof. Rosa's journal." Rick stepped forward and extended a hand. "Hand it over?" "No." Ranger growled again, this time real and deep, rising from his chest like the rumble of a war drum. Rick recoiled a step. 2 deputies behind him unclipped their holsters. From the house, Kate rushed out, Lily clinging tightly behind her, clutching the drawing of Emma, the twin sister left behind in the darkness. "Stop! All of you, stop!" Kate shouted. "Rick, you're making a mistake. That girl is a victim, and we have proof." Rick shook his head. "You're harboring a fugitive." "No," Kate snapped, her voice steely. "I'm saving a child." No one moved. Lily stood behind Kate, her eyes fixed on Tom and Ranger. Then she said, for the 3rd time, just one word. "Run." No one taught her that. She just knew when the truth isn't heard, the only path is escape. Tom turned. "Kate, the back vehicle now." Kate nodded. "Lily, with me." They ran for the shed, where Kate's late father's old Jeep had sat for years, nearly scrap metal, but still maintained, like a memory too stubborn to fade. Tom threw the notebook into the front seat. Ranger leaped into the back with one fluid motion. Kate lifted Lily, wrapping her in a leather jacket and hiding her face. The engine coughed, a protest, but then roared to life. Behind them, Rick yelled, "Stop them! That's an order!" A gunshot cracked the sky, wild warning. Lily screamed. Ranger spun, his eyes blazing, then jumped forward, front paws on Tom's shoulder, muzzle aimed left, toward an old dirt path almost forgotten, one that veered off the main road and led to the desert's edge. Tom understood. Ranger hadn't forgotten the escape route. The Jeep swerved hard. Dust billowed behind them. Rick backed off, unwilling to chase without a map and daylight. But his eyes stayed locked on them like a ghost. Inside the car, Lily curled between Kate and Ranger, clutching her map. Its innocent pencil lines hiding truths no satellite map ever could. Memory. Tom gripped the wheel. "We have to get there, before they wipe it all clean. Ranger, lead us." The Ranger didn't respond like usual. He only glanced at Lily, then laid his head on her lap. "Don't be afraid, I'm still here." The old Jeep screeched as Tom swerved it onto the gravel road leading to Hunter Hill. The moon hung low and pale, dusted like it wore a shroud. It lit the tree line with dim, ghostly stripes. No stars above, no wind. Just silence so thick. Every sound cut sharper. Tires on broken rock, the wheeze of the old engine, Ranger's breath, steady but alert, in the back seat. For the first time since their escape, Tom didn't feel fear. Not because danger had passed, but because in front of them stood the old fire station, a forgotten outpost where he once trained his son, Matt, during his early police cadet days. A place of memories, of life. The Jeep rolled to a stop outside, a low wooden structure with rusted tin roofing warped by weather and time. The walls still stood, strong, like Tom himself. No cameras, no lights, just trees, and the dark curling around them like smoke. "Inside," Tom said softly. Kate nodded, still holding Lily, now asleep on her shoulder, arms wrapped tightly around the map like it held her last tether to her sister. The Ranger jumped out first, landing without sound. No one needed to tell him. He was a guard, and he knew. This place wasn't empty. The station door creaked dryly as Tom pushed it open. Dust and old ash hit his nose, familiar. Inside, everything looked as he remembered. A scratched steel table, crooked photo frames, and the corner cot where Matt once slept during night drills. Tom brushed the dust from the table, took out an old lighter, and lit a kerosene lamp. Warm gold flickered through the cold, bare room. "Not luxury," he told Kate, "but safe for now." Kate laid Lily on the cot, covering her with the jacket. Ranger curled at her side, a living wall between her and the world. "He still won't sleep," Kate whispered. Tom shook his head. "Not since Eldora. He knows something's off, and I think he senses someone coming." Silence fell. Wind began to pick up outside. Tree branches scratched the outer walls like trembling fingers. Ranger stood, ears up, eyes fixed on the window. He growled from his chest, not forward, but backward. Tom stepped up, hand on his back. The dog was rigid, fur standing. "There's someone out there," he said quietly. No need to ask again. Kate moved to the window. Outside, the trees danced in the wind. No silhouettes, no movement. But the feeling, the being watched, thickened like smoke in the lungs. "You're sure?" she whispered. Tom nodded. "Ranger doesn't get it wrong." The dog moved, slow, purposeful, sniffing the floor, pausing at a damp patch near the door. A footprint. Still wet. "Someone stood here less than 30 minutes ago," Tom said, voice tight. "He saw us, heard us." Ranger growled again, but he didn't howl. He didn't pace. He turned to Lily and sat beside her. Eyes never leave the forest. Tom understood. Ranger wasn't waiting for an intruder. He was waiting for a sign. From her. And then Lily stirred. Not awake, just murmuring in sleep. "Don't let him read again. His voice hurts Emma." Kate stepped back. "She's remembering." Tom knelt beside her. "Lily, who do you hear?" Eyes closed, breath steady. She clutched the map tighter. Whispered. "He stands in the woods reading the prayer. The one called Dominus Lux." The last words sliced through the room like a blade. Ranger shot up and let out a short, low howl. Not bark, not noise. A memory. Tom turned. "You know that name?" Ranger howled again, longer this time. Not sound, our acognition. That morning, the first rays of sunlight had yet to burn away the thin veil of mist clinging to the dry grass around the old fire station, when Ranger jolted upright. He stood frozen, his body taut like a drawn bowstring, ears trained on the dirt road beyond the trees, where no one else had seen anything, but he had already heard it. Tom was just stoking the fire to reheat a can of soup when Ranger barked, a sharp, clipped warning, then sprinted to the door, standing firm, eyes locked on the eastern tree line. Tom didn't need to ask. He squinted toward the direction Ranger was focused on, and he understood. Not a wild animal. Not pursuers. This was something else. A presence. A person he knew. Ranger growled low, but it was different this time. Uncertainty, not threat. A minute later, the crunch of tires on gravel echoed clearly. A sleek, unmarked black SUV came around the bend at a moderate speed, then stopped exactly 15 meters from the firehouse. The engine shut off. The door opened with a crisp click, like a gun cocking. Out stepped a man in his mid-30s, fit, sharp-eyed, scanning the scene like an investigator entering a crime scene. Matt Walker, Tom's only son. Matt's gaze landed on the half-open wooden door. Tom stepped out onto the porch, standing neutral, but not hiding the edge in his stance. "Hello, son." Matt didn't reply right away. His eyes swept the surroundings. The Jeep, fresh tire tracks, the still warm fire pit. "You know what I had to do to get here?" Tom nodded. "You followed the signs, just like I taught you." Matt's eyes narrowed. "I'm here under federal orders. Arrest warrant, suspected kidnapping of a minor, obstruction of justice, concealment of a material witness. You know the charges." Ranger stepped fully outside, placing himself between Tom and the law. Silent, unmoving, unshakable. As Matt stepped forward, Ranger growled, low and resonant. Matt stopped in his tracks. His eyes locked with the dog's, intelligent, unwavering, and just like that, his hand dropped from his belt, eyes wide. "No way, Ranger?" Tom nodded slightly. "Yes. He survived. And he's the one— no, the soul, who brought Lily out of that hell." Matt exhaled sharply, stepping back. "They said he died in the explosion. They were wrong, just like they're wrong about this." Matt looked again at Ranger, now completely shielding the doorway. The dog no longer growled, but his eyes never broke contact, alert to every twitch in Matt's body. "You're hiding a child. There's a warrant. How do you expect to explain this?" Tom crossed his arms, breathing slowly. "Come inside. See for yourself. Then you decide." Matt looked at Ranger. He didn't advance, but he didn't retreat either. The dog growled quietly, but the moment Lily peeked out from the doorway, eyes wide and uncertain, Ranger turned his head toward her. When she locked eyes with Matt for just a moment, everything shifted. There was no panic, no flinching, but in her eyes, dense silence and something else, something that reminded Matt of himself. "God," he whispered, "she's scared, but she's not hiding. She ran from hell," Kate said, stepping into view, "and this dog pulled her out. Ranger doesn't protect the wrong people, Matt. You know that." Matt looked at Lily again. "Her name? Lily. Possibly Lily Carter. But maybe Lily Miller. Her real name, before she was taken into that cult." He frowned. "And she doesn't talk?" "Not much. But she draws and remembers. A twin sister. Emma." Matt took a step back, his eyes beginning to soften. He looked again at Ranger, trying to read something deeper in those amber eyes. "He didn't accept Carter as his owner. You heard it too, didn't you?" Matt nodded. "He barked. I've never seen Ranger react like that to anyone, not even in SWAT drills." Tom stepped down to level with his son. "Warrants are printed on paper, but justice isn't. If you want to arrest me, fine, but read what Rosa Martinez left. Look at Lily again, and ask Ranger, if you still believe in him." Matt turned to the dog, slowly knelt to eye level. "He won't speak," Matt said, "but he's never been wrong." Ranger stepped forward, licked Matt's hand, once, quickly, then returned to Lily's side. Matt watched him, then slowly nodded. "I'm not here as a cop," he said, pulling out his badge and placing it on the wooden table near the door. "I'm here because I need to know the truth." Tom exhaled. "Good, because the truth is waiting, and some haven't lived long enough to tell it." Ranger lay down beside Lily again. No barking, no growling, but his eyes stayed open, staring into the woods where something unnamed was creeping closer. That morning, the old fire station remained nestled quietly among the trees, like a forgotten memory too stubborn to fade. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting pale gold over the rusted tin roof. Too soft to be called hope, too heavy to be anything but a warning. Tom was reheating water in a dented metal kettle when Ranger stirred again. He moved away from Lily and walked quietly to a dark corner behind the row of wooden cabinets. At first, everyone thought he was just sniffing like usual. But then, he began to dig. Claws on wood. Sharp, deliberate. Matt and Kate froze. "Is he onto something?" Matt asked. "No," Tom said softly, eyes narrowing. "He's known it was there all along." The way Ranger clawed, rhythmic, deep, precise, wasn't random. It was like a ritual, as if he'd buried a secret years ago and was waiting for the moment he'd be allowed to unearth it. He stopped when his claw hit something solid. A faint clink. Tom dropped to his knees and brushed away the disturbed dust. A military-issue canvas pouch, faded, mold-stained, but wrapped tightly in weather-worn plastic. Beside it, a wooden plank lifted, like someone had once hidden it with care. "No way," Tom breathed. Matt crouched. As the sunlight cut across the lettering, the name etched into the fabric became clear. J. Miller 00372. "Jessica," Tom murmured. "Ranger's original handler." Kate slipped on gloves and carefully opened the pouch. Inside, a dust-caked military-grade USB stick. Its casing is worn but intact. No brand logo, just a unit code. Alongside it, a crumpled, water-stained piece of paper, barely legible. "If I don't return, give this to someone who still believes the truth. Ranger will know what to do." "She knew!" Kate whispered. "She planned for this." Tom nodded. "And Ranger kept his promise." Kate inserted the USB into her laptop, using secure recovery software from her NGO days. A single folder appeared. Operation Gracefall, Private Logs. Ranger sat at the base of the table, staring at the screen like he recognized what was coming. Kate opened the first file. A video. Grainy at first, then clear. A woman in half-combat, half-field uniform. Jessica Miller. Her eyes were tired but steady. March 21st. I'm leaving the Gracefield site. Children? Many. No birth certificates, no access for outsiders. I was deployed to train the K-9 unit. But what I found was something else. They call it the gate opening. A girl, Lily, grabbed my hand as I left. I took her. I couldn't save Emma. The image jittered and went dark. Then flickered again. Medical scans, handwritten records. Subjects G32, G33. Twins, adverse response to light and spoken rituals. G33 is unconscious after the third rite. G32 remained responsive. Ranger let out a low, mournful whimper. He stepped forward and touched the screen with his nose on the photo of two little girls. A grainy photo. Two toddlers, curly brown hair, identical white dresses, Jessica between them. Ranger's head resting on her thigh, eyes straight to the camera. Innocent. Alert. Matt swallowed hard. He was there. A living witness. Tom said quietly. Now he's the one leading us back. Another file played. Chest cam footage. Flashlights sweep across a stone tunnel. A voice chants something, a hollow ritual echoing off the walls. Ranger growled, ears pinned, recognizing the voice. Carter. Kate shuddered. He's speaking something ancient. That's not theology. It's something else. Matt turned to Tom. You were right. This isn't a normal case. This is an organized religious crime. The Ranger moved from the screen. He stepped to Lily's drawing table. On it, her map. Crude lines, tunnels, a chapel, and the triangle symbol. He nudged a spot Lily had shaded. A red dot near Highway 19, east of town. Kate looked at Matt. He's showing us the way. Matt didn't speak. He knelt and placed a hand on Ranger's head. Soft, reverent. Take us there, he said. Ranger looked at him for a second, then turned and bolted out of the station like an arrow. This time with no leash, no command. He was ready, because this was no longer a mission. It was the final promise to someone who never made it back. Inside the old fire station, The air was so still it felt like even the walls were trying to breathe quieter. The sky outside was too dark to make out the horizon. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, dissolving everything outside the wooden window frame into a smear of black ink. Ranger, as always, was the only living creature still awake. He lay close beside Lily, eyes open, breathing steady, but his posture was always poised to leap. Every gust of wind over the metal roof, every faint rustle of leaves outside the window made his ears twitch. And when the real sound came, a faint hiss of rubber soles against wet grass, Ranger sprang to his feet without hesitation. A deep, low growl vibrated from his throat, a short but precise signal Tom had known since his time in service. The enemy was near. Tom shot upright. At the same moment, Matt at the far corner of the table pulled out his gun, eyes sweeping the room. He sensed something, Tom said softly, signaling everyone to stay silent. Kate rushed to move Lily into a shadowed corner, shielding her with dusty blankets. Ranger didn't look back, his eyes fixed on the window, body taut like a drawn bowstring. Then the crash of breaking glass tore through the silence. A heavy rock hurled through the window, followed by 2 small flare canisters. Smoke filled the room instantly, making everyone cough violently. Ranger lunged, grabbing one flare with his mouth and flinging it back out before it could explode. "We're under attack!" Matt shouted. "Not the police! No warning, no sirens!" The front door slammed hard. A large figure outside was smashing the hinges with a sledgehammer. Ranger charged, leaped, and sank his teeth into the attacker's arm, jerking him backward off the porch. The man screamed, blood spraying from his arm before he was dragged away by 2 others. Tom didn't hesitate. He fired a warning shot into the ceiling, the gunshot echoing sharply, freezing the intruders for just a moment. "Back exit," Tom shouted. "Ranger, lead the way." Ranger turned and ran to the old storage room, where Tom had already opened the floor. Beneath a tattered rug lay a wooden hatch, once an emergency escape route for firefighters in the 80s. Tom pushed Lily down first, then Kate, followed by Matt. Ranger was the last to enter, only jumping in after making sure no one had been left behind. Behind them, gunfire erupted. Masked attackers stormed in. But too late. The tunnel led to a small forest behind the station, thick with trees and no clear path. Ranger ran ahead, ears perked, leading like a seasoned scout. Lily was carried in Kate's arms, her eyes locked on Ranger's silhouette in the dark. No crying, no panic, only a deep, quiet emotion. Absolute trust. They had run nearly half a mile when a gunshot rang out at the forest's edge, not toward them but in pursuit. A sniper's shot, clean and sharp, dropped one of the pursuers instantly. "We've got cover!" Matt yelled. From the hilltop, a thin silhouette emerged, rifle in hand. Rosa Martinez. She stood still, unwavering, like a ghost from old memories, unyielding and haunted. As the masked group began retreating, Rosa raised her rifle and fired again, this time bursting the tire of a black van speeding away. Chaos broke out as the attackers fled. But before she could fire a third shot, a bullet struck Rosa's right shoulder. She collapsed, her rifle tumbling from her hands. Ranger dashed forward, a blur of motion. He bounded up the rocky slope, throwing his body over Rosa's to shield her, then used his teeth to drag her into the brush. Matt and Tom reached her moments later. Rosa was pale, gasping, her shirt soaked in blood. Tom knelt. "Rosa, can you hear me?" She gave a faint smile. "Don't let Emma become me." Her voice broke like smoke, then faded away. Ranger whimpered softly, lying next to Rosa, licking her cheek. So gently, so delicately, it was like a silent farewell. "We have to take her," Kate said, voice trembling. "No," Matt cut in. "They'll be back. We need to move. Ranger, can you still lead us?" Ranger slowly rose, eyes fixed on the trees ahead, not with hesitation, but with cold certainty. He looked back at Lily. She nodded slightly, her eyes still on him, as if the bond between them had only grown stronger. Ranger stepped forward. No bark, no command, just the silent movement of a soul that refused to be broken, leading them closer to the truth and to where Emma was waiting. At dawn, the sunlight stretched like a thread across the gray treetops. In the still shadow of a natural cliffside, everything seemed suspended between two states: calm and the warning of an inevitable storm. Tom leaned against a decaying tree trunk, gun resting on his lap, eyes half closed but senses alert. Matt had returned from a patrol of the area. No sign of pursuit, but they both knew the silence wouldn't last. Kate carefully dressed Rosa's wound. The old woman had not regained consciousness, but her breathing was more even. A thin blanket was wrapped around her, and Ranger lay beside her, keeping her warm with his body heat. He did not sleep. His eyes followed every movement as if bearing the weight of the world on shoulders, forged in fire and violence. Lily sat apart, where the first rays of light touched a patch of soft sand. She didn't speak. Since waking, she had sat in silence, knees hugged to her chest, eyes staring into the forest shadows. Her expression was unreadable. Not quite fear, not entirely sorrow. It was like the worry of someone who already knew what was coming, but didn't have the words to say it. Kate approached gently and sat beside her, not asking questions, just softly touching the girl's tangled hair. Lily didn't react, but didn't pull away either. From a distance, Ranger saw them, lifted his head, then got up and walked over. He sat beside Lily, his nose nudging her hand, a silent encouragement. And then, the unexpected happened. Lily slowly stood, walked to the sandy patch where the stream had dried up, and knelt. With tiny fingers, she began to write in the dirt. Each stroke trembled but was clear. Tom and Matt moved closer, eyes locked on the forming words. Emma, Day 3. Help. No one spoke for a long time. It was as if the air itself froze around those 3 words. Ranger stood nearby, staring at the message, then let out a soft whine, a choked sound from deep within his chest, so low and sorrowful it sent chills down Kate's spine. He lowered his ears, took one step closer to Lily, and bowed his head, as if in apology, or a kind of communion beyond words. She just told us, Matt whispered, eyes still on the sand. Emma's still alive? And the 3rd ritual is near? Tom frowned. According to Jessica's video, the 3rd ritual is the sacrifice. Kate turned sharply, eyes wide. If they're preparing for that, Emma only has hours left. Lily didn't look at them. Her hand rested on the name Emma, as if trying to keep it from vanishing. Then, for the first time, from lips parched and silent for too long, a small voice emerged. Emma. Ranger snapped his head up instantly, ears perked. He moved closer to Lily, licking the back of her hand, then sat beside her, unmoving, as if his whole being had joined her in that sacred moment. Lily whispered again, louder this time. Help. She turned to Kate, then Tom, her eyes no longer distant or vacant, but pleading. She began to draw a map in the sand, tunnels, a chapel, a triangle with an eye at the center. Below that, she wrote, Gracefield, East Hollow, under church. Tom nodded. We know that place. Matt opened the GPS and pulled up the map from Jessica's USB. Old military testing site, later sold to the Light of Grace cult. The area was supposedly shut down for geological reasons, but in truth, they turned it into underground bunkers. Kate asked quietly, How much time do we have? Tom checked his watch. Less than 8 hours. Ranger barked once, sharp and clear. Everyone understood. They had to go now. Kate packed the medical kit. Matt lifted Rosa onto a collapsible stretcher, heading toward the emergency pickup point after calling in Marshall County's rescue team. Lily looked at Ranger. She placed her hand on his neck, her tiny fingers gripping his thick fur, trembling, and whispered, Find Emma. Ranger looked back at her. No growl, no bark. He simply lowered his forehead to hers. a ritual only two souls who truly understood each other could share. And so they set off again. Ranger ran ahead, guiding them through the woods. The wind picked up. Branches hissed warnings overhead, but none of them turned back, because now they weren't just chasing the truth. They were racing to save a life. And somewhere ahead, Emma was still waiting. Each step Ranger took on the thick bed of dry leaves seemed to stir fragments of memory long buried beneath the dust of time. Leading the group, he didn't move fast, nor slow, but steady, like a ticking second hand counting down to an irreversible moment. The smell of old soil, damp wind, and something achingly familiar, both cold and tender, seeped through his fur, pulling him back to the fateful day. In Ranger's mind, the light changed. The breeze softened. The wild grass bent gently under his paws. He was somewhere else now. A training field 20 miles from Gracefield. Open land, no fences, no sirens. Just Jessica, and a young German shepherd with eyes smarter than most beings she had ever met. "Come here, Ranger!" Jessica called, holding a mint-green sweater in her hand. Sunlight angled through the trees, casting a glow on her back. Ranger ran over, standing tall like a soldier. She knelt and pressed the sweater gently to his nose. "Lily's scent," she whispered, almost inaudibly. "Remember it, like your own blood. This is the last scent I want you to carry with you." Ranger sniffed deeply. Not once, but twice, 3 times, 4, until something changed in his eyes. No longer a curiosity, no longer conditioned response. A connection formed, silent, unwavering, unbreakable. Jessica sat down beside him, back resting against a fallen tree. "You won't understand why I'm doing this," she said, her voice lowering. "But sometimes, to save someone you have to disappear from their life." The wind tousled her hair. Ranger tilted his head and leaned against her leg. No words, no command. "Tom Walker," Jessica continued, eyes distant, "is the only one I trust. If I don't make it back, take Lily to him. Even if you have to walk through the fire, through sand or blood." Ranger lifted his head. His eyes caught fire from hers, a quiet flame that would never go out. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a metal tag engraved with Walker T. "I've left clues," she said. "He'll know." She stood, slipped her sweater back on, and paused, then turned toward Ranger. "No one will call you a hero. No one will know what you did. But I'll know. And Lily, one day she will too." She walked away, her footsteps muffled in the grass. The Ranger didn't follow, but he looked back one last time, and in that look, a silent vow was carved into his soul. Reality surged back like a cold wave. The wind picked up. The group stopped in front of a flat patch of ground at the base of an old cliff, where both Lily's hand-drawn map and Jessica's USB aligned. The buried entrance to Gracefield, sealed 15 years ago. "This is it," Tom said quietly. The Ranger didn't wait for a command. He stepped forward and stood still for a moment, head bowed low. Then, as if awakened by a primal instinct of survival and unshakable loyalty, he began to dig. Clumps of dirt flew. His claws scraped the hardened ground until they bled. But he didn't stop. He didn't whimper. He didn't look around. Tom moved to help, but Kate held him back. "Let him," she said. "This isn't just a mission. It's a promise." Lily slowly walked over. She sat beside Ranger, said nothing, and gently touched his neck. Feeling the blood seeping from his skin, she pulled out her handkerchief and wiped the wound. Then, what no one expected, she began to dig too. Her hands were small and frail, but each movement was determined. Her eyes, no longer lost, now burned with purpose. A metallic clang rang out. Ranger had struck steel. The others rushed forward. "Underground door!" Matt exclaimed. Tom pried at it with a crowbar. It wouldn't open yet, but the hinges and seams were visible now. They cleared more dirt until the full surface appeared. Kate gasped. "It leads to Gracefield's bunker," Tom looked at Ranger, panting, his front legs bloodied, back caked with mud. But his eyes were still sharp. And when he looked at Lily, he gave a weak but resolute bark. "We can get in," Matt said. Tom nodded. "There's still time, but not much." Ranger approached Lily and sat before her. He lowered his head, as if waiting for orders. Lily's voice trembled, but it was clear. "Find Emma now."